June 10th, 2015. A stole cheese from the fridge. Punishment, 24 hours in the pit. Outside temperature, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. He vomited 3 times. No water. Tomorrow, we check if he is alive. July 15th, 2015. A ran toward neighbors. Caught him 200 yards out. For the lesson, cut off left pinky. Screamed like a gutted pig. Heather said, "Now, you're our little cripple." August 3rd, 2015. Used drill wires at 12 volts today, attached to nipples. Heather laughed. September 2nd, 2015. A cursed at me again. Decision made. That's enough. Tomorrow, finale. Pigs are hungry. These words were not written by a horror movie character. Their author is a real person, a father in his diary. A 96-page notebook. Police found methodical records of torture inflicted on his own 7-year-old son. Pages that the Kansas Supreme Court ordered to be classified and partially destroyed, considering that they could provoke mass suicides. The story you are about to hear took place almost 10 years ago. It shook America, sparked a wave of public outrage, and led to high-profile lawsuits and legislative changes. But gradually, this tragedy began to fade from collective memory. News articles have been archived, and the primary sources, photographs, surveillance camera footage, social media screenshots, and court documents, are becoming increasingly difficult to find. Mentions of this boy's name and publication of his photographs are now marked as sensitive content on many platforms or completely blocked by moderation algorithms. But we will trace the entire tragic path from the moment the man abandoned his pregnant partner Diane for his mistress Heather to the last day of the little boy's life, who became an innocent victim of this betrayal. You will see how one act of selfishness set off a chain reaction of events that led to unimaginable cruelty. We'll reveal 2 conflicting versions of his death, as the inquest has been unable to reconstruct an accurate version of events, and let you decide for yourselves where the truth lies. Dear friends, the algorithms will do everything they can to keep this story from spreading. So please support this video by watching to the end, like, and share. Let's remember together a wonderful boy who had his childhood and life stolen from him. Adrian Jones was born on May 15th, 2008, in Lawrence, Kansas. From the first days of his life, he was a happy, cheerful child. The boy had a particularly bright, genuine smile that, according to his grandmother, Judy Conway, lit up his whole face. Adrian loved football and always told his family that he would definitely be a football player when he grew up. He was just a typical little boy, full of life. His grandmother later recalled, he was just always smiling, always happy. Adrian loved nature, showing care, even for his toys. Every evening, he would carefully cover his plush friends with a blanket. Despite his young age, he had a rare quality for a child, the ability to empathize with others. From his earliest days, the boy was never destined to know stability or genuine parental love. The story of betrayal and pain began even before his birth, when his father, Michael Jones, abandoned pregnant Diane Pierce, Adrian's mother, for his mistress Heather. Michael and Diane were never married, but their separation literally destroyed her mental health. She fell into deep depression, couldn't manage her life or care for her children, which ultimately led to Adrian being found unattended at home and removed by Child Protective Services, along with his sisters. Adrian's grandmother, Judy Conway, also intervened. Seeing her grandchildren's dire situation, she immediately contacted CPS and began fighting for custody of all her daughter's children. However, this struggle wasn't destined for complete success. Judy managed to get custody only of her eldest granddaughter, Kaya Doctor, born in 1996, who wasn't Michael's biological daughter. Adrian and his two sisters, Madison and Bella, were placed in their father's custody, despite the fact that he had shown little interest in them for many years. One might think Adrian's life would improve in his father's home. At first glance, a former police officer, successful businessman, with a new wife and stable income, what could go wrong? Heather and Michael jointly managed not only a bail bonds business, but also a company called Paper Chase Promotions, organizing MMA fights. Heather also earned money selling Michael Kors watches and other goods online. When Diane's three children, Adrian, Madison, and Bella, arrived at their father's house, they joined Heather's children from previous relationships. Thus, 7 children lived in the house. Adrian even trusted Heather, telling her about the suffering he experienced living with his mother and her numerous boyfriends. As a result of these conversations, Adrian was diagnosed with PTSD and serious emotional detachment, conditions that required special care, understanding, and professional help. But compassion was the last thing Adrian found in this home. Instead of care, the boy faced a real hell that lasted until his death. Notably, out of the 7 children in the home, only Adrian became the target of systematic and cruel abuse. Over time, teachers began noticing worrying signs. At Overland Trail Elementary School, teacher Linda Garcia sent 5 requests to CPS. In her reports, she wrote that the child was eating paper from the trash and that there were iron marks visible on his back. The horrifying response from CPS was, the parents explained that the boy practices Parker. This absurd excuse was accepted without further investigation. Neighbors also weren't blind to what was happening. Martha Clean, who lived across the street, once heard the boy screaming, "Just kill me," when he was locked on the balcony during winter. Police came twice, but Michael simply showed his former police officer ID, and the case was closed. The system, meant to protect the most vulnerable, proved powerless against the manipulations of someone who knew it from the inside. Even when Adrian's biological mother, Diane, tried to see her son in 2014, Michael threatened her with a gun. She filed a police report, but this investigation mysteriously got lost. Later, a teenage neighbor, a 16-year-old boy, whose name is hidden, admitted he saw Adrian being walked on a leash in 2014, but his parents forbade him from airing dirty laundry, saying, "It's not our business." A gym teacher once noticed that the boy couldn't feel pain. He broke his finger, but didn't even cry out. CPS attributed this to autism without conducting a proper investigation. At school, Adrian showed all the signs of abuse, becoming increasingly withdrawn, though occasionally complaining about being beaten at home. His school grades, which had been excellent until 2013, suddenly dropped dramatically. Another alarming signal of the beginning of systematic abuse ignored by the system. In the following years, the situation rapidly deteriorated. Michael and Heather subjected Adrian to systematic torture, which they methodically recorded and documented in photos and videos as if conducting a scientific experiment. In March 2014, Adrian was briefly placed in the Spofford Rehabilitation Center, but not because of evidence of abuse. Rather, because Michael directly stated that he didn't want him. Medical records confirmed that the child had experienced serious abuse and neglect. But despite this, on September 4th, 2014, Adrian was returned to his father and stepmother. His stay at the center was the last bright spot in Adrian's life. After returning to his father's house, his life became a living hell. He was starved, sometimes not fed for several days. When food was given, he was forced to eat from a dog bowl with his hands tied behind his back. He was kept locked in a shower with only a mat and a dog bowl. He was tied to an inversion table with a blindfold, forced to stand with raised arms for 5 to 6 hours until his limbs swelled. Locked in a suitcase for extended periods. Made to stand in a dirty, cold pool for hours, sometimes all night. Forced to wear a spiked collar around his neck. Subjected to electric shocks, with the charge held for 15 to 20 seconds. During this time, the family led a double life on social media. Heather posted pictures of a happy family with the hashtag #PoundPerfectFamilyPound. At the same time, Heather was diligently documenting more and more abusive options for Adrian and how his condition was rapidly deteriorating. Michael and Heather isolated the children from the outside world under the pretext of homeschooling in the so-called Jones Academy, where very little actual education took place. The family frequently moved between Kansas and Missouri, each time telling Child Protective Services in one state that they had supposedly moved to the other. This clever trick helped them avoid follow-up inspections. While the other children in the family led quite normal lives, eating from McDonald's, visiting shopping malls, cinemas, and entertainment centers. Adrian was desperate to survive. On one recording made in winter, when he was forced to stand in the freezing cold, a conversation with Heather can be heard. All this time, Michael's uncle, Willie Flowers, also lived in the house. He witnessed what was happening, but never intervened or reported it to authorities. The year 2015 became the last year of Adrian's short life. Now we know how events unfolded, thanks to Michael's diary, photographs, and video recordings that later became the main evidence. On June 15th, 2015, shortly after his 7th birthday, Adrian was punished for stealing cheese from the refrigerator. He was forced to spend 24 hours in a pit outside in 95-degree heat without water, while vomiting. In July, the boy made a desperate escape attempt to the neighbors. Michael caught him 200 yards from home, and according to his own records, cut off a finger. In August, Michael used 12-volt wires from a drill, attaching them to Adrian's body. In his diary, he coldly notes that the boy soiled himself from pain while Heather laughed. By the end of summer, Adrian was so emaciated that he could neither sit nor stand. He was tied to a garden chair and placed in a shower stall, the glass door of which was replaced with a piece of plywood with a lock. One of his sisters recalled hearing her brother shouting through the vent. Under the floorboard in the house, investigators later discovered Adrian's own secret diary. In one of the last entries made about a month before his death were the words, "For a child who once smiled openly at the world and dreamed of becoming a footballer, death was a welcome relief from unbearable suffering." September was the last month of Adrian's life, and there are two versions of his death. Adrian was spending more and more time in the shower with the exit blocked, tied to a chair. He couldn't even move. Heather had installed a surveillance camera and was sadistically enjoying watching him. On September 2nd, 2015, Michael wrote in his diary, "The next day, September 3rd, at 11:17 p.m., he uploaded a video to cloud storage that was later deleted but recovered by digital forensics. There are two contradictory versions of what happened next. According to the first version, later put forward by Heather, Adrian died accidentally from exhaustion, being tied to a chair in the shower stall. She described it as tragic negligence. The prosecution insisted on the second version. Adrian's death was a coldly planned murder. The video shows Michael hitting Adrian with a baseball bat, and you can hear bones cracking. Adrian falls unconscious. Heather checks his pulse and states, "Whatever the exact cause of death, Michael and Heather's subsequent actions were equally horrifying. They left the boy's body in the shower for 2 weeks. Then, when the smell became unbearable, they bought pigs, deliberately didn't feed them for several days, and fed Adrian's remains to them." Another horrifying detail: Adrian's DNA was found on a chainsaw. The planning for this act was in advance. A few days before Adrian's death, Heather typed into Google. Her Pinterest account had a board with pins such as how to make a cage for large animals and economical recipes using all parts. Most horrifically, for almost 3 months after the murder, no one noticed Adrian's absence. Only on November 25th, 2015, on Thanksgiving Day, did police receive a domestic violence call. Heather reported that Michael had attacked her, tried to strangle her, and threatened her with a weapon. When the police arrived at the house, they found one child missing. The other 6 children, girls between the ages of 2 and 10, were immediately removed and placed under state protection. Under duress, Heather admitted that Adrian had died back in September and that Michael had disposed of his body. Michael Jones, 44, was arrested and charged with child abuse, aggravated assault, and aggravated battery. The next day, the police returned with a search warrant and found human remains in a black plastic container with a pink lid in the livestock pen. Forensic examination confirmed these were Adrian's bones. Only the skull, jawbone, and a few teeth. Everything else had been destroyed. At first, Heather played the role of a victim and tried to convince the investigation that she was not involved in Adrian's death. But the investigation worked tirelessly, and soon Heather was arrested as well. 29-year-old Heather Jones was booked into jail on December 10th and charged with first-degree murder and child abuse. Her bail was set at $5 million. Michael's charge was also upgraded to first-degree murder. His bail was set at $10 million. The judge decided to keep the bond at $5 million during Heather Jones's first court appearance this morning. Heather and her husband, Michael Jones, both face murder and child abuse charges. When the landlord, Jennifer Hoovers, came into the house, she was shocked at what they'd turned it into. Jennifer Hoovers had been working up the courage to come back here after news broke that the couple she was renting her home to were charged with first-degree murder. She began renting this home to Michael and Heather Jones a 1.5 years ago. She says they seemed like a nice family who showed interest in buying the home eventually. They were very polite, respectful, didn't see any issues with them. But as she walks through her home, she sees a very different side, a different life the Joneses were living. Landlord Jennifer Hoovers played a key role in revealing the details of this crime. After Heather's arrest, she asked Jennifer to go to the house and save photos of her children from her iCloud account. Instead, Jennifer discovered hundreds of photos and videos of Adrian being abused, which she saved in a folder called House of Horrors and handed over to police. Experienced detective Brad Lancaster worked on the case, who, according to colleagues, worked countless hours. even sacrifice sleep for justice for Adrian. It was as if he had a premonition and was trying to do as much for Adrian as he could. Tragically, he died in the line of duty before the investigation was completed, but his colleagues finished the case. The trials of Michael Jones and Heather Jones became some of the most emotional in Kansas state history. Judge Robert Sandler, with 30 years of experience, called Michael's actions the most disgusting in his judicial practice, adding, "This is the worst thing I've seen in 30 years. They turned a child into animal feed." Michael pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, trying to justify himself. "I didn't want his death, but he pushed us, stole food, lied." His lawyer chose a defense strategy based on temporary insanity, cynical, considering the methodical torture documented in the diary. In the end, Michael received 25 years in prison. Heather also pleaded guilty, but tried to shift the main responsibility to Michael. "It was Michael who came up with feeding him to the pigs. I only helped." Her lawyer tried to present her as a hostage to Michael's sadism, but the court rejected this version. Judge Sarah Sheridan denied a reduced sentence, calling Heather an active participant, not a victim of circumstances. She received life imprisonment. A memorial service was held for 7-year-old Adrian Jones on Saturday, October 21st, 2016, and his remains were then buried at Oak Hill Cemetery in Lawrence, Kansas. In 2017, Adrian's biological maternal grandmother, his mother, and his eldest sister all filed a lawsuit alleging that both social workers in Kansas and Missouri knew that the boy was being tortured and could have prevented his death. The lawsuit was seeking $25 million in punitive damages. While the Kansas agency argued that it was difficult to keep tabs on the family because they were so often moving, they ultimately ended up paying the boy's family $1 million in March of 2024 to settle the lawsuit. Adrian's tragedy led to important changes in legislation. In 2018, Adrian's Law was passed, requiring mandatory camera installation in homes where children are registered with Child Protective Services. Today, Michael Jones is serving his sentence at El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. Heather Jones is in Topeka Women's Prison. In 2023, her appeal claiming she acted under duress was rejected. Detective Stuart Littlefield added, "The memory of 7-year-old Adrian Thomas Jones should become not only a bitter reminder of human cruelty, but also a call for vigilance and compassion. Each of us can be the one who doesn't pass by someone else's trouble and perhaps save someone's life. Rest in peace, little angel Adrian."